I'd like to thank you for joining Sports Philanthropy World and our panel on maximizing hybrid events. My name is Randy Smith. I'm an intern with SPN. Without any further ado, I'd like to hand it over to our moderator. So, Eugene.
Thank you. My name is Eugene Barlaz. I am a member of the board of the Sports Philanthropy Network. I'm very happy to present these two great speakers and why you should be doing hybrid events in the near future. So first, let me introduce Jaime Smith. Jami was involved in the conference planning space for about 11 years. She has recently moved on to a company called ChoiceLIVE. She is very involved in the nonprofit space as a board member of the Indianapolis Kiwanis Club and is also the director of recruiting for the Meeting Professionals International Indiana chapter. She is a boater for life. And she also in her bio mentions that she's got 2 children. I'd also like to present Darren Port. Darren is the founder of Powered by Professionals, a event management group that works specifically with nonprofits, helping charity organizations both have events and raise money. I can tell you from experience that he is extremely well respected in that space. He has raised a great deal of money over the past decade in that space all over the country, and we're looking very forward to hearing his perspective on hybrid events. If I could ask Jami to open up with a few moments and introduce herself and what she's really interested in, and perhaps where she sees the biggest problem in hybrid events.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone, and thank you for allowing us to be here with you. One correction, I'm an aunt, not a mother, but that's all right. Yes, hybrid events are definitely the future now and moving forward. And I think what COVID has allowed us to realize is that the virtual audience that was possible pre-COVID finally got the front light, right? So virtual events were how we were able to meet, just as we are here today. But moving forward, there are going to be many people who are still going to need to be meeting virtually, obtaining the information, and having that as an opportunity for an event is huge to maximize your reach and allow for content on demand after the fact. So I think depending upon how you structure your plan moving forward, having that virtual and in-person event as an opportunity for your audience is going to be key.
And Darren, how about you?
Are you asking what one more time on the question, Eugene?
Just, introduce yourself a little bit more, your major concerns or interests in the hybrid side.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Eugene and Jami. I'm glad to be speaking with you today. We've been doing professional fundraising and event management for 19 years in the nonprofit sector, helping nonprofits grow and strategically approach their events. We, I guess, really embraced the whole virtual platform component recently, and when everything went down. Actually, it's funny, in 2007, my business partner and I had talked about creating a virtual event and how it would be to sit at a table and how you could put on different clothes, you could dress up your person, yourself, and you can have a conversation. We both came from the internet space in the 90s, took a company public in 1999. So we had come out of that world, needed a break for a little while, and then in 2007 we were brewing this idea, but the market wasn't ready. So it was really interesting when it all happened, 15, 16 months ago. It was a great opportunity to learn what was out there, see what people were doing, and then bring this to our organizations that we work with. And we've since produced over 30 virtual events for the nonprofits that we work with. And and now it's hybrid time. We are in the midst of planning about 15 to 20 hybrid events for the fall. And what does that look like? How is that going to work? And what an opportunity it is for the nonprofits. Just have to figure out how to do it cost effectively, and and really take advantage of all the opportunities tied to live and virtual and putting them together. So looking forward to this conversation, Gene.
Fantastic. So let's start with some basics. The type of events that can be done virtually and or hybrid versus the types of events that really, really need to be in person. So we all know that a product demo can be virtual and or hybrid. We have all figured out by now that if you're doing an appreciation lunch, it's pretty hard to do in a virtual mode. Possible, gets harder. But how about other things like VIP events, actual conferences? How do you see this playing out? And Darren, why don't I go back to you?
I think you just have to manage the expectation of what's going to be. I think when you're right at this stage in the game, one very important thing to keep in mind is not to try to do too much. We saw that in the virtual space right out of the gate. Some people are trying to have everything live, and they were sending things to people, and it was just like way too complicated, and it was unnecessary because they felt like they had to do it, otherwise it was going to be boring or it was going to be whatever. Meanwhile, then there was like 18 things wrong. And, I think you just have to figure out what are like the 3 things that are important to you and what are you trying to get out of the event? If it's, I don't do some of the things that you mentioned, Gene, but in my world, in fundraising and events, that space that I'm in, for us, it's, are we going to get our mission across? Is the message going to be clear to the audience that is either in person or virtual? Is there an opportunity for some interaction with the people? Now will there be interaction between the virtual folks and the live folks? And what does that look like? And can we raise funds? And is there an opportunity for everyone to participate in that part of the event? So that's how we're looking at it. We're trying to find what are those 3 key things, and then let's make sure those 3 things get checked off when we're working with somebody.
Jami?
Absolutely. I completely agree with Darren and his focus on how to start it, right? Because the whole point is, what's your goal? What's your plan for the event? What are your audience members hoping to get out of it? And if it's a matter of just reaching more people, raising more money, having, the expanse that is the beauty of virtual events to reach a larger audience, what are they trying to do? Can they attend the event? What is the best way to get the information or the focus back to the audience members? And if it's a matter of having them in person because everybody wants to be in person because we're humans and we're social creatures, that's something to be said. But as Darren mentioned with the connection, are you hoping for just the virtual attendees to communicate with each other? Do you want them to communicate with those online? Are you going to have a platform or some system to where those in person can interact and see what's happening online as well? I will say those that are in person are there for a reason. So they're going to be around the water coolers and the breaks, communicating and connecting with the physical people next to them. But I think it's something to be considered for those online to not be, as I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, don't put them by the wayside. So there's an opportunity to get creative with what you're doing and kind of go back to your question, Eugene, corporate life. Absolutely. If there's annual conferences or sales, pitches or gatherings that you're trying to have an experience with your audience members, this is our chance to look at what you're trying to give them in return. I know I keep saying that, but maybe look at it differently. There's been a couple of opportunities that I've seen with association groups that are changing their event to not be so much content. Yes, of course, meeting their requirements if there's credits and accreditation things, but giving it more of an experience. So going to those locations and utilizing the space and those surrounding venues to give the audience members a chance to culturally be diverse in what they're trying to see within that space, right? So maybe having more interactive events and not so much give me the information immediately and have it to where you're checking a list, box off that list. I think there's an opportunity to look at fundraising, and Darren, he can speak to this by all means on a higher level than I can. But, what we have found is during this virtual, there are some events that should never go back online or in person. They should stay online. Webinars are great, right? If you're trying to just get the content out there, do you really need them in person? Can you save the money for that event and use it for another opportunity for a fundraising, a gala or a gathering that you're going to want to have people truly interacting with each other. So again, start at the end and go to the beginning. Know what you're trying to do first.
So I'm going to pick on a specific type of nonprofit, and I'm involved in multiple, both national and local nonprofits as well. Darren might be able to speak to this. I think of auctions. Now, this past year, several of those organizations made an attempt to have virtual auctions, and they just didn't come off right. That interaction, the bidding against people, it just didn't quite happen. Although when I first thought of a virtual auction, I was like, great, have it in advance like a lot of people do anyway. Do the live event, but everyone's sort of sitting at home. And then obviously, ship out the stuff, however that's going to work. I think some things had to be picked up. But when I think about a hybrid auction, means that that gala or that event can be going on and there can still be, people online interacting. In my brain, it works. How about planning that, Darren? What do you have? What changes when you're going to try to do that auction live and virtually?
Yeah, well, I guess there's different components of, an auction. We have like a silent auction. So let's cover all of the different areas. We'll start with that first because that's probably the easiest one. Silent auction is when they either put the items out or there's images that people can see. And over the last few years, you've seen it go virtual anyway. So there were people at the events or on your phone. You can check the items. If you don't feel like going over to the table, or if you're stuck at your table, during the program, you could be scrolling through and clicking on different items. If you get outbid, it notifies you. So that actually works out perfect for the virtual sector because they can participate by not being there, and they're participating just like everybody else. So now you've just opened your audience to a larger group of people, and so now you could have done that already, but now at least that audience is engaged in the program and it actually tied closer to it than just putting a link out there. Second piece is a live auction, which is a little more complicated. Could also be done through the phone. Won't have that same feel unless there are some ways you can stream or put up on the screen people, if you're doing it through like Zoom, or if you're using some other components, you can do it through a chat function, through a Vimeo, or there's a lot of different technology platforms. We use Cadence for a number of things, GiveSmart, OneCause, all of them have a chat function. And so it's Vimeo, and you can have people chatting their bids. That's another way to go about it. And then the appeal is usually just straight donation. So that actually probably does very well with this new hybrid approach. The live auction is the only one that's a little dicier. But you still we'll have to do a few of them to tell you, Eugene, next time, like what's the best way to do it, because we haven't done enough to really answer that effectively.
Jami, you're involved from the volunteer side. What are the organizations you're involved with looking at as far as having some sort of fundraising events, a hybrid, or have you folks started to even have that conversation yet?
Absolutely. I actually attended my my second in-person event, which was actually my first hybrid event a couple of weeks ago for the Meeting Professionals International. As you mentioned earlier, I'm on the board for the Indiana chapter, but I attended the Ohio chapter because we're not too far away, and they had their annual awards fundraising opportunity. And so it's just their annual event, kind of end of year, community gatherings. They had a silent auction, and just as Darren mentioned for past events, it has gone virtual. So you can do it online, you can do it on your phone, and it's pushed to other people outside of the event. So that piece of it was happening anyway, but if this hybrid event, there were actual attendees physically there, but then also online as well. It's interesting because there are ways to promote it. And I think it's all about the prep work. So planning it ahead of the game so that more people are knowing what's coming, gathering those informations, the donate silent, the items that you're actually trying to raise. So there are ways to do it, working with your production partner, whether it's in-house or an outside AV production rental company, talking with them about the platforms that they use, working with those, Give Smarts of the world or the other apps that are out there to make that, an easy transition for those that are in person and online. But when it comes to the hybrid piece, are you trying to, test the waters with a moderator, and not to say like a Eugene of the world, but like an actual pre-recorded digital. And they actually tried that with this event. We learn from our mistakes, and that's, I think, the beauty of what COVID gave us is having grace and knowing that things are going to go wrong. It's technology, things happen. So just continuing having that grace and forgiveness, but also learning from your mistakes and planning even better for future years, right? So, having this digital MC speak the names of the individuals who were nominated or those that had been in the industry for 10 years, 15 years, and having a little highlight on that so that we in the audience physically there could see that video roll, but then also those online were able to access that too. So it's a seamless, hopefully in some cases, opportunity for them to see what we're seeing, but also getting a not just I'm hearing what's happening online or physically there and not seeing people, because unless you're investing in a lot of technology to have cameras and switching and making sure that they see what we see or have a portion of it, it does go back to what Darren said with regards to money. It's a matter of looking at what your budget is, but also kind of taking into account that you're doing it differently, so you're not feeding as many people, you're not having the room and board. Shift that that money to the technology column of your budget to help start with those, offset those costs in a way. And fundraising pre-hand, getting in-kind sponsors and working with your partners to help alleviate some of those costs. So it is happening. We're trying to get creative from an association standpoint. There are others that are just like, nope, we want to meet in person. We're not doing an online component, and that's okay if you don't need to reach those people. So hopefully I answered your question, Eugene.
It's funny because when you mentioned trying to do things differently and shifting your costs, one of the events that I attended about, I'll say 3 weeks ago, it's a venture capital association. It's primarily based down in the Myrtle Beach, Hilton Head area. These people have been waiting to get together in person for a while, but there's a lot of people over the age of 70 that's just not doing that are part of the group. We went hybrid, and someone called me a few days in advance and they asked me what my favorite restaurant was and my favorite food was. And I was like, why are you asking this question? They're like, we're sending everyone in the hybrid mode in the online world food. And I was thinking, what part of this is going to go really wrong? And shockingly, they had enough people working on it and enough phone calls being made. Everyone who attended in the virtual side got a meal for them and their spouse. In some cases got directions. It was pretty amazing. I've been sent lunches during this past year when someone wanted a lunch meeting with me, but doing it for 45, 50 people who were attending online versus the 20 or so that were going to be in person at a golf lodge, they did pretty well. And that was something new. That was something like, oh my God. And you can't do that for 500 people. I think, Darren, you mentioned you did an event for 400. You can't do that for 400. You can almost do it for 50, but these folks had a budget. These folks had a budget that nonprofits don't have. So here's the real question I have. You're thinking of a virtual and now hybrid. How much are the two of you leveraging social media in order to get this done? Darren, how about you?
At the end of that, before you said leveraging social media.
Well, it's all of a sudden, like, for instance, there's something called StreamYard. So if you're doing virtual and you're going out to, let's just say, Facebook, if you're allowed to, you can go out to LinkedIn, you can go out to YouTube, really if Roy had the permission for LinkedIn, we could be doing Sports Philanthropy Network conference, and this could be going out live to YouTube, live to Facebook, live to LinkedIn, and live. It would have taken a lot more work, but social media would have been needed in order to get the word out, figure out who was going to attend, how they were going to attend. For your events right now, to what extent are you leveraging that social media component where people want to watch online on whatever platform they want to watch on?
Yeah, I mean, we're using social media more so to promote and market the events leading up to the events, and post events, using segments of the event as post event emails, and push it out through social media, maybe a 30-second video that was in the event, or a minute video here. We have streamed, we do a lot of the streaming through Vimeo, and we have pushed some of it through Facebook Live on occasion. We're actually on the phone today with someone who's looking to do a New York City walk and have a virtual component to a hybrid event where they want to pre-record a majority of it, and then they want to stream it, I think through Facebook Live, but we'll do it through Vimeo and then stream it through Facebook. And then there's also going to be someone live in Times Square who's going to stream it through us, through Facebook. So it was like, again, I don't do all that, so it's a little over my head. You're starting to lose me here with the question, but that's why I have other people on my team who handle that. But yeah, we've really come up, we've worked with all different types of technology, and and we're still playing around. The question is how many people are going to actually get engaged and watch and participate? That's been going in the wrong direction lately as people are ready to get out. We've seen the numbers come down with the virtual events that we've had. So I'm curious to see when we go live, is there an audience virtually? I think there's a need, and it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. The question is, are people going to embrace it and leverage it? I can't answer that yet. It seems like it makes sense for people out of town. So like if you really wanted to, it's a New York centric event and you're a national organization, what a chance for them to at least participate and be a part of it. But if you're local, I don't know if people are going to be as active. That's the unknown right now.
Jami, how about you and ChoiceLIVE? Are you getting into this market, and how are you using social media?
Absolutely. And, to Darren's point, are they going to be there? And I think it can be, I'm going to sort of answer and then come back and truly answer you. But, when you have a hybrid event, you don't have to have everything mirrored that's in person online. And I don't think you should. Otherwise, the numbers are going to continue to go down because people they want to be there. They want to be present, unless funds or, age or, different reasons for not being able to be in person are going to happen in the future. But I think those that, if I have a choice of being online or in person, most people are going to steer back to the direction of, yes, we want to meet in person, back to that whole social, humans are social. So what if you just take your keynote and broadcast it? And this kind of answers your question, Eugene. Stream it on the Facebook Live or YouTube or through Vimeo, absolutely. Promoting it through all the social channels, because I think that gives you a wider reach of your members. Not everybody's on every platform. Some have overlap. Are you, as the association or, the group that's actually doing the event, are you connected with all those people for them to even know? Are they following your page? Do they know what's happening? So yes, hitting the traditional emails, the blast that you would do to promote the event, pushing that on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, whatever your presence is as an association, start there. Now, I think you can also step back and survey your attendees beforehand. Are you going to be in person? You can kind of vet that goal asking beforehand, so that you will find out if it's worthy for you to put the funds into making it happen, through the virtual side of it. But I think the fact that all of the other, Facebook's free, you can push it out to that. And if you want that, if your audience wants that, I think that's an opportunity for you to do that. So I'm kind of on point with Darren. I mean, it depends on the event. It depends on the group. A lot of corporate, they're not going to be using Facebook Live, right? They'll stream it to a platform, manipulate the stream that's coming in to give you the lower thirds and to add more of a wow factor for those that are viewing it online. But that's where I kind of go back to maybe you just broadcast the keynote and then have that as an enticing after the fact video or a teaser for the marketing for the next year, right? To promote, hey, we missed you live in person, or I know you only want certain content, so we did record certain sessions and have that. That's another fundraising opportunity too. You know, you can sell that piece of it to have a virtual event after the fact. So it doesn't have to be a true hybrid, but if you record your breakout sessions that are worthy enough content-wise to have at a later time for attendance, you know, to see it then. And I will say, we all love the content on demand. So doing that, recording that and having that available for after the fact, it's kind of like this. Can people access this later? But will they, right? What is your click rate? What are you doing anything with it? Are your attendees really wanting to see online? We're all Zoom fatigued and over the computer, you know, communicating this way. I personally enjoy it. I think it's great. It's a great way to be, you know, efficient and effective. But I know that if you do it day in and day out, it does get taxing. So there you go.
So I'm going to follow up with Jami for a moment. We are at a sporting event right now. And I could see by looking at the website of ChoiceLIVE that there's a specific area for esports and sporting type events. And one of the things you talk about is a media center data display wall, which I find fascinating, a concept of interview rooms, and it goes right down the list, and announcer booths at those types of events. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that is going to be used hybrid versus completely virtual?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, pre-pandemic, we were using these video walls and I mean, think LED, right? A lot of events are outside. So you have sunshine, you can't see a projection, you can't see, you know, certain monitors, but LED is a technology that has been around for a long time. And fortunately, ChoiceLIVE has been leaders in the LED market in the Northeast side of the country. And we've got partners all across the country that we're able to have that as a resource. And I think with, you know, different events that are outside, you've got an audience that are you know, meandering around the space and they want to be able to see what's happening. So if you have cameras coming from an actual event or something that's going on, you know, portraying that on the screens, it's feasible. And I think with the hybrid component, it's just a matter of what you're trying to get out there. So are you having an outdoor event that you want to, you know, broadcast out, maybe like as a remote location to an event that's going on in a different venue, having that as a secondary location and having those media walls to do just that. Absolutely. You know, but that there's a cost to it, right? So it's that technology. It's the, you know, phones are not cheap. Technology is not cheap. And even though, you know, we can have it, you have to have that technology to do it and you have to have the funds to make it happen. So absolutely.
So one of the things that's been coming up a lot during, you know, hybrid virtual events are wearables. I of course think about the GoPro. I think some of you can tell that there's a river behind me. I was with a few people on a place called Noachucky. I'm not an expert kayaker. The three people I was with were, as assigned by my brother to keep an eye on me. But the two guys behind me were both wearing GoPros on their helmet. The front of my kayak had a GoPro. And the guy in front of me had a GoPro that was pointing back at me so my brother could see when I drowned. That was his figure of what was going to happen. He wanted proof it wasn't his fault because he wasn't on the river. But I have a good friend that owns a horse. I've been trying to convince him to put a GoPro in front of the horse. It's a racing horse. I've been trying to convince him that when he races at Belmont later this year, that there should be a GoPro on the horse. There are now NASCAR drivers with GoPros outside their cars. Those haven't been shared yet, but you know, obviously there are licensing issues there that are being worked on. And needless to say, NASCAR has a thing about showing a live accident on screen via the GoPro. That might not be one of the better ideas. But having said that, wearables, cameras, various things, if you're doing a hybrid event and you're trying to involve the people virtually, what do you think about that? And, you know, is that cost prohibitive or is it possible? Darren?
Yeah, I think it is possible. The question becomes, when are we going to try it, and then who's going to take the first stab at it? one idea that we've been throwing around, or that I think we've thrown around with a couple of charities, and I've heard, is like, what, how they used to go around with those, like, take a picture, they would hold up those things, take a picture of people, you just stand there and they'd be like, okay. And how about streaming people that are at home through that, so they could see what's happening at the event? So they're actually watching the event, walking around the event, and maybe they can communicate with people. I mean, in theory, it sounds interesting. Again, it has to be vetted a little further. We're going to have to try it maybe on a smaller scale. And then what is the cost? What is the company charging to do that? What is the tech pieces that are involved with that? I heard Jami say earlier, streaming the actual event live through the tech platform that you're using. That's definitely something that's on the table, and that may be used for part of the event. But it's interesting, Gene, what you're saying. There's, where does it get cut off, and where can it come into play? I think there's a lot of different areas. That just, the question is how many people are watching at home, number one, and then what does it cost to do it, right?
That's going to really be the big question, is how many people are going to be watching from home. And until some of this gets tried, we're not going to know. And having said that, now I don't know what the vaccination rates are in New York or Midwest or such. I watched them in North Carolina, where only 54% are vaccinated, and 50% of those don't go back for their second shot. You may have all heard that North Carolina State University baseball team got tossed out of the World Series of Baseball on Saturday because they had multiple COVID positives and only 13 active players. It turns out that about half the coaches aren't vaccinated. So, I mean, they had their chance. I was in shock when it happened. I live in Raleigh. We were all watching Saturday morning for the second game against Vanderbilt, and the people in the stadium did not know that NC State had been sent home in the middle of the night. So how many people are going to be watching virtually versus in person? It's going to be interesting over the next few months. So let's get into this other part of hybrid, and Darren and Jami, you both deal with it. You've also both mentioned the cost. How about charging for these events, and how they're going to be charged for, whether you're sitting in front of a screen or you're physically going? Any insights there, how that's going to get handled?
Go, Darren.
Ready. Yeah. So, we're going through it right now as we're doing all the pricing for all these events. We're discounting it. I would say about a third, if I was just putting a number on it, somewhere between a third to a quarter of the price to participate. It's really more of just having some fee that they're actually paying to participate. So it's not free. If it's free, people don't show up. They pay, they may show up. If you charge too much, they're not going to pay it. So what's the right number? And for us, it's probably, in that 1/3 to a quarter of the price of a real ticket. And because we're not offering that much value to the people at home outside of participation in the event. It's almost like their donation, and they can jump on for a little while. The cost of sending things, like you mentioned with the food, we looked into all of those things, and some of our clients were really into that. And we've done what we're finding that worked pretty well, and I think might work really well now for people who don't want to go to the actual event, is do watch parties. So you can have a board member that's not interested in necessarily attending, but is willing to host 8 people at their home, and they'll have the event on for an hour, 45 minutes, and the rest of the time they hang out with their friends. And maybe we're having people live stream from home. Sometimes we pre-record the live stream, at like 45 minutes before the actual event, or even while the event's going on a separate thing, and then at least have the recording to make sure it's right, and then stream that through. So there are other ways to go about it, but to answer your question on a cost, it's about a third to a quarter of the price for an actual ticket.
Yeah, and I'll just add to it. I think it's a matter of that value, right? What does it cost you to do it, and what's the value of someone who would attend it? So definitely not the same price for those in person versus those online, because like as Darren said, depending upon how you do it, those online may not be getting the experience that they would rather spend money on, right? I think because of how we all were pushed into having to do virtual and only virtual, yes, things were free. And as Darren mentioned, and I completely concur, free is not going to work moving forward. People will go back to the fact that there's no value in it. So why would I waste my time if there's no cost associated to it? So again, there are ways to do it less, less expensive. I'm not saying the right word, but cost effectively, while still giving them that experience. I don't think that you have to mirror everything, nor should you, from what was done in the past. But again, going back to, this is our chance to get innovative and creative. And I think even kind of going back to the previous question, we've done it in some cases, but what added value is giving to the end users by adding more things. So testing it out, trying it out, giving them a chance, and going back to that whole survey. Will you be there? Can we count on you for this rate? Will you show up?
So let's go into we've been talking about corporate, nonprofit. Let's talk about the personal side of how many weddings were canceled last summer because you couldn't have 200 people. You could have 10. I actually have a niece that got married last June. She had 8 people. The only person not from her immediate family that got to go was my brother-in-law, who happens to be a rabbi, and a rabbi was needed to marry them, so he got to go. His wife didn't get to go, who was my sister. Their 4 children did not get to go. Literally, it was my brother-in-law's 3 kids. It was the guy that one of his daughters was marrying, his father. That was 5. My brother-in-law was 6. And then I think there was an aunt and uncle from that side. And that was it. And instead of having it at the Navy Piers in New York, which is a really nice place for a wedding, they had it in a backyard in the Berkshires. Other people decided to put off their wedding for a year or year and a half. It's coming up on summer. And guess what? They're still not going to have 300. But now maybe they can have 50 and they want everyone else involved. Jami, you're in technology. How is this going to get done? And is it going to work?
Define work.
Am I going to send the present afterwards?
Right? Will it work? Well, hopefully they're asking for the presents beforehand, because maybe you add in the opening of it as part of the event. There's some incentive, right? I think it's doable. I think, it's not going to be I can't even say that. I think anybody who is planning that dream wedding doesn't really happen anyway, right? So I think there's things to consider, that it's about community. It's about having your people with you, as you mentioned, Eugene, with people not being able to be there. Maybe you set it off. Maybe you have a party when the timing is right, and you bring those individuals that can physically be there and stream out to those that are afar and that wouldn't be able to come anyway because it costs to get to that location, right? I think anything's doable. Definitely with the right price, you can make it amazing and adhere to that. Yes, this is exactly what I wanted, but I guess it goes back to, again, what are they trying to do? Are they really trying to just have that tight, intimate moment, or are they wanting to experience it with their family members that would hit those numbers? Maybe wait a little longer. COVID's not gone. The pandemic's not technically over. Yes, we're doing well, but as Eugene, you pointed out, not everybody's getting vaccinated. So, and that, just to point out, a lot of these events, unfortunately, it's become and has been from day one a political situation. So how do you expect everybody to either write out that they have their vaccine? It's polio, right? We had it in the past, like, let's keep moving forward. But I know that in some cases, are you going to expect the rapid test beforehand? Are you having those clearances, the checks, to make sure that everybody's going to be safe when they are physically there and present? And just another piece to do too, what about the engagement? You know, have you guys seen the wristbands of red, yellow, and green? Green being, yes, hug me. Yellow being, let's stay at a distance. Red meaning, don't talk to me. I don't want any part of it. I'm not feeling safe yet. There are ways to incorporate, safety measures, I think, but it's a matter of the planning from top down of how you want to implement them. So I kind of went on a whirlwind, but hopefully that gave you some talking points, Darren.
New York's open right now, so you can do full capacity at every venue in Manhattan right now. Full capacity, which is not ideal because some of the clients, the charities that we work with, they don't think they'll get full capacity, but some of them are in contracts that have carried over. And now we're negotiating the contract minimum down. But I mean, if you watch sports, these venues are 100% capacity, these basketball games, these hockey games. I mean, everyone and their mother's there. If you're Jewish and you do the sleepaway camp thing, like I have my kids right now, we just dropped them off Saturday and, they're all at sleepaway camp. So, I think it's currently over, at least in certain, I think at least that's the mindset that it's over. And I know, like in New York, you're asking, Gene, that I think the vaccination rate's extremely high up here. A lot more people vaccinated. I know in my town, it's like 97, it's some ridiculous percent, 90-something% of the town is fully vaccinated, including like all the everyone with 12 years and up, so yeah, it's I don't know.
One other thing I do want to point out, and you may have this in your question, Eugene, but coming back, right? Hotels, venues, technicians, we're not all back. Our industry was hit hard, and we're not at full capacity. If you guys have, seen how hotels are working, there are a lot of tech team members that are not able to get their contracts out because they're doing the work of 3 employees. So that's something to also consider when you're planning these events and what your expectations are. So definitely start early and plan for the fact that you're probably not going to get the response rate that you were used to pre-pandemic. So I thought I'd point that out too.
I will admit, I wasn't thinking about that. I actually know someone here in the Triangle, in Research Triangle Park, that owns a venue. Now, it was closed for a very long time, and I just interacted with him. He happens to also be the general counsel of the Carolina Hurricanes. So in my attempt to get tickets a few weeks ago, I of course ended up in a conversation with him. And yes, I managed to get I managed to get the 2 tickets I wanted in the section, which would have no one else, which is what I was aiming for. But having said that, I asked him about the venue, and he can't get servers. He basically has like a 30% kitchen staff. And he basically said that he and his partner, for the one event they had to set up the tables themselves because the company that they usually have do that just doesn't have any employees. So I hadn't really been thinking about that, but yeah. And yeah, so I mean, when was the last time before the pandemic that the Knicks had a whole full house? In 20 years? All of a sudden they're in the playoffs.
Believe it or not, people go to their games for the last 10 years selling out. I don't know why, but they do go.
Right. It's been a long time since I didn't live in the tri-state, but someone commented on that. I guess they were in the first round of the playoffs, and they're like, oh my God, Madison Square Garden is full. And I was like, those people they would go out in a pandemic. That's how desperate they are.
Yeah, exactly.
So we started to talk about the wedding side and sort of what's next. So what is next? And I also want to say it's about a quarter of. Are there questions out there? Chris, Randy, can you see any questions popping up?
There's nobody, I don't think.
No one. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know who was interacting.
Right now, it's just us.
Okay. The session's being recorded. It's going to go out to a fair amount of people. And I will tell you that last year's conference, for as many people as they had many more viewers on YouTube afterwards. So we talked about the charging. This is actually one of the conferences that had a fee to attend, and they got a fair amount of paid responses. I am on the board. I do talk to Roy about every day in the last 2 weeks coming up, and they were getting a good response. A lot of sponsors, a lot of various things. But so the question is sort of what's next? What haven't we covered? You know, where's the big gaping hole that we're all about to fall through? And Darren looks like he's ready, so I'm going to choose Jami.
Choosing Jami. I love it. You know, I think we've covered quite a bit of it, and Darren may correct me, but it's starting early. I think we need to start even earlier, even though, you know, it's last minute. I know virtually, when you're doing a virtual event, you don't have to start as early, but I think with a hybrid event, looking at it as 2 events, if you're truly doing a hybrid event, is key. And having more helpers, having more Randys and Chris's and Eugenes as moderators to help offset those needs as you're fluctuating the event. But communication, I think that's the biggest thing. Communicate early, communicate often, and communicate even more. I think that will help with the numbers on both in-person and hybrid, or on the virtual side of the hybrid event. Getting people excited about it and informed and aware of safety measures for those in person, informed and aware of how they can access the content after the fact if they're virtual, if it's not immediate and uploaded onto the platform, or, you know, whatever avenue that they use. Getting it out there so that then you can continue to promote the next year, and however you do it. You don't have to know exactly how you're going to do it, because we don't know if there will be another pandemic, or, you know, maybe taking that into consideration. What are your risk measures and your, you know, your plans for pivoting, like we all did for virtual, and now transitioning over to bringing people back in person. So I don't know if it's necessarily a pitfall, but I think it's something to consider and keep in mind that over communication is key, because we see it, it takes us 7 times to actually get the information, getting it out there, and you know, 1,200 emails a day. Try different avenues, try all the social media channels to get that information out there. So Darren, anything more to add?
Yeah, I forgot the question already, but you can see this is the state of my mind right now. But yeah, I don't know. I think, you know, you got to check all the boxes. You got to make sure you're working within what's the set aside budget you're working within. Like I said at the beginning, have those what are the 3 goals you have for this event, and then let's try to not try to do everything. Let's just try to accomplish these 3 things in a way that are going to leverage the hybrid model and technology in a way that's going to work. And I think less is more in a lot of cases. So I would keep that in mind in this as well.
So the one spot that we really haven't covered, and I'll be honest, it makes me a little scared. As I mentioned to Jami while we were talking pre-show, we did a project a few weeks ago. The Saturday night prior to the event, I fired the original event planning firm, and I went with what I can best describe as put it all together in 24 hours team. And on top of that, it was in Vegas. I'm in North Carolina. I wasn't going to Vegas. And it was a hybrid event. So going on the road, you know, we've all been doing everything from our house or maybe from a local office for the past 15 months. In the very near future, both of you are going to have to leave your homes, leave your offices, and physically go someplace with your team. How much is that making you nervous? How much more can things go wrong? Do you have team members that simply don't want to go with you anymore? What are you looking at? What's your internal company plan?
Yeah, well, today I had the entire team in for the first time since the pandemic. We had staff meetings, we had new people onboarded. We were in a conference room with 8 or 9 people. The conference room wasn't that big. We talked about the travel we have coming up. We have events in other cities, so we'll be on the road. Everyone seems pretty much all in. We're going to try to go to like a 2-day-a-week plan so that people can still, you know, they don't want to lose their getting to work from home thing, and they've earned it. They've done an amazing job, and I told them that. And but you bring up a lot of good points, and it's as a CEO of a company, it's a tricky thing. You don't know how. There's a lot of guidance out there on how to address things. I've been kind of just feeling it through my staff a little bit. I'm like, what's the a couple people I can really count on, and I kind of ask them what they think before I do anything. But I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think you did. And from ChoiceLIVE's standpoint, we're headquartered in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, and we actually have quite a wide range of remote workers that have come out of this pandemic, and we're continuing to evolve and grow our team back up because, of course, production companies, yes, we were able to do a lot of studio work, and that's what held us, as well as the fact that we have a lot of outdoor LED. So we were able to do, movie nights and now, commencements and things like that were socially distanced. So our team members, those that were the technicians and such, we're already out and about, right? Our culture is really great to where we're all on the same page and we're in it for the right reasons, and we know how to be safe and all of those kinds of things. We're actually, I'm jealous, Darren, because we're gearing up for our gathering in August, and we're all excited to get together and work together and get to know each other. And those of us newbies, right? So I've been there, almost 3 months now, coming from a previous production company. But I've got team members on our team that are in different states, and we've been remotely connected, but we're all excited to get back together and continue growing our world and helping the clients and getting out there and doing the work. So yeah, we're ready. I mean, slow and steady. Do it safely, make sure everybody's, still following protocols and all of that, if there are requirements and restrictions and such, but I think it's a good time. So
I'll ask you, it's about 6 minutes of 6. So I'll ask you to each take about 90 seconds, 2 minutes, and give your final thought to all the people who are going to be watching this on YouTube in a couple of months. Darren? Sure.
Yeah, I think there's a real opportunity, depending on what type of event you're doing and how you're going about it, but it's important to evaluate the pros of doing it virtually, doing it a hybrid event, or doing it live, and to evaluate what your organization is trying to do, and could, depending on what that answer is, which solution will enable you to do that the best. Our company, Powered by Professionals, is available for free consultation if you have questions that you'd like to talk through your concept. How does fundraising tie in? How do the logistics work? How does the technology work? We'd be happy to have that conversation and share the different experiences we have. And as we go day by day here, we're learning more and more about this. So thanks again for having me on this in this conference and for participating for the second year. And look forward to wishing everyone well in the future.
Love it. I second everything Darren said, and looking forward to the fact that this shall be in person next year. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, ChoiceLIVE and Darren's company and all production companies and those partners out there, I think that's one thing you want to align yourself with. Lean on your partners. They've been through it. They've been vetting all of the applications and the platforms that are out there. They've found the mistakes. They've learned from them. They're growing. We're continuing to develop our repertoire, if you will, to know what's best in planning these events, and have grace. Going back to that, have grace with those events. Know the technology is going to fail, but it's okay. And all of those platforms out there, if you're using platforms to do these hybrid events, all of them work. About 80% of every platform works just fine. It's that extra 20% that you want to, determine, do you really need that extra? Finding out, as Darren said, what's your goal? What's your end plan? And, working with your partners to make it happen, starting early, communicating, and getting the team members to make sure that both events, if you're doing a true hybrid, is established the way you want it to be, and continue learning. So make our industry better. So I love it. And I'm out there as well. You guys can find me on LinkedIn. Jami@choice.live is my email. So look forward to hearing any questions or follow-ups if anybody needs anything.
Yeah, Darren at Powered by Professionals. And thank you, Jami, and thank you, Eugene.
Yes, thank you all.
I will close out the session. I'd like to both thank our speakers, Jami and Darren. I'd also really like to thank the two room monitors, Randy and Chris. You did a great job a second time for me today. I greatly appreciate it. My name is Eugene Barlaz. I can easily be found on the internet. And if you can't find me, then you should simply not be using the internet. We'll close out here. Have a good evening, and please come to the next session. I happen to know that there's a spectacular session coming up where Michael Neal is the moderator, and it's right after this one. And for the life of me, I am forgetting what it's called. But
something about skills, something skills related.
Skills, it's in the skills development space.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Take care,
Thank you,
everyone. Be
guys.
well.